So, this is about rendering all over the damn place with React Native and React Native Web. Quick note about the title. It's like hard to know what to call this concept. Universal components is the first thing that I thought of, but people in the community don't like it. There's already too many universal something related to React. It's not so great. I don't know. So if any of you guys like any of these options, you let me know. It's still kind of unnamed. Cross-platform React Native is kind of the idea. Universal rendering is the non-framework specific concept. So what is it? It's view layer abstractions compiled through custom renderers to the native view APIs of end platforms. I mean, fundamentally, it's just an abstraction, right? And then you resolve it to platforms, right? So not too outlandish an idea. Pretty complicated in practice. We'll get into it. So talk quickly about the ecosystem. It's not just React and React Native. You got Vue and, of course, David's favorite, Angular. And, of course, React. And then platforms, the popular ones, iOS, Android, TV, and the focus of this talk, web. So here we go. I'm going to take a quick diversion to illustrate some of the concepts, and you guys will see. The oldest days, 2000s era cross-browser compatibility. Raise your hand if you were coding a decade ago. All right, hell yeah, that's awesome. It was dark days. It was definitely a little harder. So there's some cross-platform issues, okay? Some of them are JavaScript. Some popular, some notable JavaScript cross-platform issues were just element selection. If you wanted to select a DOM element, very hard to do cross-browser. Page load events, Ajax, etc. There's a lot of them. With CSS, also some challenges. You would often have something like this, a separate style sheet for every browser. And oh no, they've served their time. So tools that helped cross-platform issues. This is, by the way, the one and only picture I was able to get in the haste of preparation. Anyway, it's Bernie Sanders. He's dapping it up. He's smooth. For JavaScript, mercifully, there was jQuery, which helped standardize those challenges. And was honestly kind of how I got started in JavaScript in general. So thank you, jQuery. And with CSS, you had our prefixer and modernizer, which helped take just standard props and make them work across all the madness. And so, real quick before I get into this, what's the idea? The idea is those things resolve cross-platform problems through abstractions. Cool. That's it. It adds up to more things. It's not just true. So yeah, React Native. What is it, and how is it different than React? I feel like if you were to just Google what's the difference between React and React Native, you see things that are true, but I feel like miss some cool things. But you see, instead of a div, you're going to use view component instead of p or span or paragraph. You're going to use text. That's one of the differences. You hear the common things. Animation is different, etc. But I think it's more interesting to understand how they relate. Because, anytime you're writing React Native code, almost anytime, you're importing regular React too. So they pair. It's not an either or. They work together. And in some ways, React Native component library, because you're just pulling these components, And by the way, components in general, just abstraction over like, divs and stuff. Pulling these components and their abstractions over native view components, so they compile down, and that's all it is. And then also, the other big part I would say is feature APIs that allow access to platform features. And this is very similar to the web. And so a lot of what React Native does is just stuff that the browser does, right? How do you handle a touch event? That kind of stuff. So just to clarify, it's an overlapping Venn diagram, not separate circles. It's cool. All right. What? You can compile React Native to the web? Yes, you can. And it's awesome. So a view becomes a div, and text becomes a span. But that won't do it, will it? There's all this richness of HTML5 semantics. It's good for accessibility. It's very well thought through. And this obviously isn't going to do it. So that's a big problem. There's a lot of big problems. React Native Web is, there's a bunch of these libraries. I think, what is it? Airbnb, I think, has one, and there's another pretty big one, but React Native Web is the biggest one. And so just to clarify, what it's doing is taking React Native code and compiling it to the DOM. And so how does it handle trying to, take the React Native primitives, make them DOM-oriented? Well, there's API abstraction. So, I don't know, it's taking a step back for a second. It's weird because, on the mobile side of things, you have all this richness, all this API richness. You can do photos and geolocation, all these like cool things. So in a lot of ways, like mobile is a little bit ahead of like, the feature set of browser, but browser has a lot of things that mobile doesn't, one of which is accessibility. So, too soon. Accessibility. Mobile's accessibility API is not very good. I think Android's is the worst of the two, but say what you will about browsers. They have better accessibility, and that's awesome. Accessibility is sexy. It is a good thing to do. And honestly, like at first blush, you might think it's tedious, but get into it. It's thoughtful. It's interesting. We all like interesting, thoughtful things you can, nerd out about. So I encourage you to get deep on it. And it's also the right thing to do. Challenges to the development. I'll get into the accessibility, other types of things in a second. Actually, it wasn't that hard. All right? You download the React Native CLI, React Native init, Trill app. All right? And then I just did create React app. Who here's done create React app before? All right, it's easy as pie, right? Same name, moved them to the same folder, resolved a couple pathing issues. And then you have the basis for an app that can render all over the damn place. So starting out wasn't that hard, but it gets hard. Challenges, styles. So yeah, React Native has a whitelisted subset of CSS that the primary display operator is Flexbox. It's different than the browser because instead of it defaulting to row, it defaults to vertical. So you got to adjust it there a little bit, but it's Flexbox. You're just using Flexbox. So if you know that API, it's not too challenging. So, I mean, the native way to do it is just CSS objects, all right? So it's like a little bit different than, styling with hyphens and without quotes. It's a bit more of a pain in the butt, I'll tell you. But you eventually get the muscle memory, and it's cool. It works out. But if you don't want to go through that nonsense, if you don't like camel casing instead of hyphens, I don't like camel casing instead of hyphens. You don't like putting quotes around things, you can try, there's like a bunch of different really pretty decent CSS styling tools. And it's the same ones essentially that exist for React. So, I mean, the big one is styled components, but you got a bunch of other ones. And, it's just like styling in general with React is such an unsolved question. So, whatever you choose, that's between you and your God. I don't know. But it is tricky, and the whitelisting part of it, that's serious. It's like you can't even do CSS gradient backgrounds without an extra hassle. A lot of hassles. It's weird because like I remember like 2013 era is like, okay, I've learned HTML, I've learned CSS. I mean, I'm getting there with JavaScript. I pretty much got it. Like the web's not going anywhere, so I can just rest on my laurels. No, lots of things happened. But anyway, like that complacency about just like doing basic stuff. When you switch to, like a paradigm where you're having to think about everything so that it will resolve to like 3 different platforms. You just have to rethink everything. Fonts, SVGs, like it's not as easy as, or it's just not what you know. It's still kind of, you can get it done. They're all solvable. Anyway, oh yeah, and what else? The other thing that's great is that something will look good in iOS, but it won't look good in Android. So we're back to cross-platform issues. All right, anyway, challenges, part animation. We got the animated API. So it's not transitions and it's not like jQuery animated. And this is actually kind of complicated. It's one of the things that I deferred learning for a really long time because it was a pain. You got to put it in state, and then you have to resolve it. And it's basically, it's actually, let me prime the pump here a little bit. It's just a timing function. So between 0 and 1, how do you get there over time? You throw a cubic Bezier function on it, it gets pretty nice. Once you get the hang of it, it gets really nice. And then the other challenge of it is interpolating it for like percentages or other unit, some sort of conversion. Yeah, it doesn't have to be percentages. But the API is pretty robust. It's good. You can get, and it looks, it's 60 frames per second if you do it right. So it's nice. But it brings us to the bridge. The bridge. Can you guys see that all right? Probably not. Okay. Well, the other image of the slide, kind of a bust. All right. So basically, I mean, the bridge is crucial to this, right? So, in the browser, JavaScript is running on one thread, essentially. Same is true for your iOS and Android. They have multiple threads, but the connection to the actual platform goes through one thread. And if you have like something that's hanging up, way more brittle in the browser, and it can really mess you up. So let's see if all right. This is your JavaScript thread. You have process. It gets serialized, so it can transfer, and then deserialized and applied to the native platform API. But how does this relate to animated? All right, animated will mess that up. So there's like part of the animated API where you can just say use native, and what that does is when it's compiling, it serializes it, it sends it over to the bridge. So it's just priming that pump. It's a term I invented, priming that pump. Just kidding. Anyway, so that's a bridge. There's more to talk about there, but we'll keep it. So testing, all right? Mobile testing in general is kind of hard. You got existing, the black box solutions. Appium is probably the biggest one, but there are definitely others. But there are some compelling open source libraries that are doing gray box testing, which is essentially black box, except it's part of the same code base. It runs on the same thread. You give IDs to components, and you do your normal kind of end-to-end stuff. And Detox is probably the furthest along, but expect that landscape to evolve. Building. Oh God, this is the most fun. And anytime any of us say fun, we know what we really mean. little bit agonizing. So, I mean, the baseline is building with Xcode and Android Studio. That actually works pretty nice out of the box. But if you want to add any React Native module, like an React Native SVG, to create parity with SVGs, whew, you're in for it. I mean, it's not that crazy. It's just like, why did these files change? Oh, why is my Git commit way too big? Ugh, no, thank you. But it worked. It was fine. It got the job done. And you know, we're playing with fire here with this, doing it to web as well. So fine. But you got other cool tools. Fastlane is real snazzy. It'll do a lot of the app store prep, make some screenshots, you know, well, just assemble things in general, you know, upload it, etc. App Center is a relatively new thing. You know, I just got to give props to Microsoft because we hate them for the most part. But their App Center business is not too bad. It's actually pretty cool. And also VS Code. So I don't know, like many abuse, but you know, they're all right sometimes. Yeah, they're fine. So App Center is pretty cool. But my favorite's Expo. And Expo was on the scene like when I first started looking at this a couple of years ago. God, probably not even that long. But it wasn't, I mean, it's good for kind of like a CodePen JS fiddle type thing back then, where you could mess around with it, demo things real easily. But if you wanted to get it to a store, you had to eject, which is always, you know, another couple hours of fuss. So it wasn't that good. So I like ignored it until like last week. I was at a React Native meetup, and some guy was like, "Oh yeah, Expo, you can like get it to the store now." And it turns out you can do a lot of tight stuff within that. That team, they're killing it. They're doing so good. Anyway, so all these like Xcode, Android Studio problems that, you know, they're small, but they're gonna take 20 minutes every time. And it's gonna be a pain every time. Just gone with Expo. Trade-off is, so, I mean, your bundles are bigger. Like your app, when it goes to the store, it's gonna be bigger because it ships with basically all of the major React Native APIs. So like React Native SVG, it's in there by default. But maybe you don't need something like, I don't know, React Native Maps or something like that. So it's a little bit too big. But if you have an app that doesn't need it and then later you do, you can use Code Push. And what is Code Push? Code Push is this wonderful thing where you don't need to make the user install the app again, send it over the air with JavaScript. Very smooth, very nice. So Expo's tight, I highly recommend it. Actually, yesterday, there's just like this very easy tool you can just npm install where you can tie it into Travis or CircleCI. And it just builds a PR version of your mobile apps and gives you the QR code. Take a picture with your Expo app on the phone, load the app for every PR. Very good for front-end testing. It's good stuff. Anyway, Expo's tight. Regretting that font size. Yeah, let's, you know, I don't know if it's gonna work. Oh, it does. My goodness, because it's on a different browser instance. This is magic. See, that's what we do. Is we make magic. This is it. So I don't know, it's this quote. I like this quote. Everything old is new again. Because like, you know, back in the day, we had our IE and Chrome, we had all these style sheets, right? Same thing with this situation, because, you know, you're branching out to, like, you know, component.android.js if you need an Android-specific thing, or you're testing the platform to, you know, give a different style for this version, mostly Android. So anyway, that's nice sentiment. And I'm Greg. You can find me at Lego McGrego.
All right, give it up for Greg.
Thank you.
All right, we got time for a few questions. Who's first? All right.
My question is how fun it is to incorporate like React Native components to like, let's say, an existing iOS app that you have.
That's a good question. Well, I would think it'd be kind of apples and oranges, because if it's just iOS code, I feel like all of your templates are going to be written in what, like Swift. And honestly, I definitely want to clarify, I'm not Android iOS developer, so I don't know. Maybe there is like an easy path forward, but I think it'd probably be pretty challenging.
Like, I guess, like, can you start building React Native components and then like incorporate them as you package up the app?
Oh, that's a good question that, again, I'm sorry to say, I don't know if I can speak to with authority. But that's such an interesting question. Does anyone know the answer to that? All right, we'll Google it. We'll get back to it. That's a great question. Sir.
Have you been able to successfully get Microsoft App Center to work, sign the builds for test flight like functionality? But
I'm feeling PTSD right now, because, I mean, yes and no. I did get like some demo type thing, right? But we're using a component library, and it's in a private repo, and there's no way to, well, it's not there's no way. It's really complicated. You have to put in an environmental variable, and it's not clear how you call that and when. I'm probably just being a baby about it, but no, the answer is no.
Yeah, no, I've given up on it as well and just gone back to test flight. I would love to.
Interesting.
It seems like brilliant software, but man.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff about it.
Yeah.
Have you checked out Expo? Because it's kind of doing it.
As soon as you have to pull in native code, then Expo kind of breaks down. But yes, I mean, Expo is amazing. Otherwise, yeah.
Right on. Good question.
So what's your, there we go. What's your experience using, the hardware native plugins to interact with the device within React Native?
Very limited. I forgot part of the story is to tell you like why the hell I was doing it in the first place. I work at Sweetgreen, and they wanted to have, oh my God, it was hilarious how, we want an app by 3 months from now that's gonna work on web, iOS, and Android. It's you and one other dude, back-end guy. All right, do it. And I was like, well, I've been meaning to try this thing. So the answer is, I'm sorry to say no. Other than it's like kind of peripheral relationship to the animated API. And the reason I even did React Native Web is because it's such a simple app. It's just single sign-on, right? So I'm getting a list of token authenticated links, showing it, having a little UI. Very simple. You'd think.
All right, I think that's it for our questions. Please give it up for Greg.